Sorry about that. I thought I had the wrong link.
Oh, okay. Doing all right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I appreciate you bailing me out, man.
Hey, no, it's no problem. No problem at all. I hope, but I do make sense. I just gotta do it together. So hopefully it makes sense.
Live. It's
Greenberg Music School. They remember that first visit with the teacher, Dr. John Sakis. He found one of the only two music schools in the country dedicated to teaching the
all right, all right, all right. We want to thank everybody for joining us for our monthly mental health ministry conversation. We ask that everybody that's watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, on our website, if you could share the post, we would be extremely appreciative. Again, those that are watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or our website, ask that you share the post, and we would be extremely appreciative. All right, back again, and one of our coordinators of our mental health ministry, Brother John Parker, will lead us in a conversation on social support and mental health, a crucial connection. And if anybody that's watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, in the comments, you'll see pinned to the top of the comments, you'll see uh, um, a link to Zoom. And so if you would like to come in and participate with us in on the Zoom platform, just click that link and you can come in with us on the Zoom platform. And if not, I'll try my best to keep my eye on the comments so that we can see any comments that you might have. But I now put it in the hands of Brother John Parker.
All right, thank you much. Thank you much, Pastor Rawls. I appreciate it. Glad to be here another time. It's a lot of stuff going on in life, but I'm thankful for just another day to be able to be with y'all and have a good time and talk a little mental health. So today for the topic, I thought it was kind of timely. COVID and kind of the pandemic and things that were going on kind of ushered in a new day for us as people in terms of having to be indoors, not being connected to other people, not being outside like we normally would, doing the things that we normally would do. And a lot of statistics, a lot of reports, a lot of articles and stories are written about just how people kind of had poor mental health kind of over the 2-year period, extended through the pandemic or whatever. And so one of the things that I thought would be important for us to talk about is just understanding how important it is to have social support, especially in times when we're unable to get out or we're being mandated to be indoors or we're just away from people. Staying connected to people is very important. And we'll kind of just go through what social support is and kind of ways in which that we can improve our social support, stay connected to other people, and just kind of understand the benefits of social support. We'll go to the next slide. Any questions or anything before I started? Anybody have any concerns about anything? Okay. So the idea for social support and understanding what social support is, it refers to the help that we receive from other people in our lives. It can come from family, it can come from friends, it can come from family workers, it can come from multiple sources. And the idea is, it's empathy when you need it, it's encouragement when you need it, practical support, offering a helping hand with chores and different things of that nature. And social support is very, very, very a powerful tool, can have very powerful impact on our well-being, and it can help us cope with the challenges that we have, whether they're big or small. And social support plays a crucial role, a critical role in maintaining positive mental health. It provides a sense of belonging, it provides validation, it can provide security, and it can buffer against stress and promote resilience.
So
We
does
can go
that
to the next. Any questions?
do those people is it just kind of like just a natural relationships and you kind of use what you can from those people, or do these people need to have some type of skill sets to be a benefit to us?
Yeah, we'll definitely dive into that. But I think in a general scale, it just depends on what's going on. I think the idea oftentimes is if we look at something like PTSD and soldiers returning from military service, right? Um, Oftentimes with the symptoms of PTSD, people want to isolate, they want to be alone, they don't want to be around large crowds, they don't want to be around noisy places. And because of the symptoms that they're experiencing, and that isolation that take place, they don't have support in place. And so it can be a friend, it can be a neighbor, it can be a loved one, it can be a child, it could be a spouse. And it also very well can be a paid professional, or not even paid, but just somebody professional who's professionally trained to provide the social support. I mean, it can also come from animals. A lot of people have support animals. You'll see on the airplanes, if you have that seat, you might be lucky enough to sit next to that person that has a Chihuahua or a pit bull. It just depends on what kind of support dog they're claiming supports them. But it can come from all of that. I generally don't like support animals in restaurants. It's just me and the fur flying everywhere, but people have them in those situations too. So it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. All right. And so digging a little deeper into support systems, as we just kind of talked about briefly before, support can be social support in terms of emotional, informational, or practical. And so with emotional support, we talk about, like I talked about with the example before with PTSD and soldiers or people returning from military service. Oftentimes people may not want to talk about what's going on. They might not want to dig deep into the specific situations that they're experiencing, but they just want to have somebody that they can talk to, right? Somebody that they can explain what's going on without, interruption. Oftentimes it reminds me of I don't know how the true this is in every marriage for all men and women, but oftentimes they say, when a wife comes to their husband with a dilemma, they're not always looking for answers. They just want to vent. They just want to talk. And then the husband is looking to solve the problem and have the answers, have the answers, have the answers. And with social support, it's not about having the right answer to say all the time. It's not about even speaking sometimes. It's sometimes just being there to be in a listening ear. And I think that's underrated when it comes to emotional support for a lot of people, because oftentimes we don't know how to just listen to people. We don't know how to just be there and sit with them. It's kind of like Job and his fellas, when he's going through what he got going through, everybody's got an opinion, everybody's got something to say. But it might have just been better in some of those situations just to be cool, just to be listening, just to sit there and be a support. And so emotional support can come from just providing the empathy, providing some kind of understanding. Maybe people do want to be reassured and they want to hear what you have to say, and that reassurance that maybe things don't seem like they're going to be okay, but they will be. Or maybe the reassurance that, hey, you've been through things before, you can get through this too. Or the reassurance of, hey, you've never been through this thing, other people have been through it, and whether or not you want to compare yourself to other people, there is hope. There's, even when it's raining, the sun is still shining above the clouds. So emotional support comes in all ways. And one thing I just like to tell people all the time is, like, you don't always have to say something to provide emotional support. Just being there, just being a helping hand, just kind of sitting with people is one way to be in emotional support. And I think one thing to understand also when people are experiencing the need for emotional support, it's really just in times of distress, people may not know what they need. And when somebody's on the outside looking in, they may be able to offer some type of support or some type of help that the person doesn't even know that they need. Oftentimes you think about someone like when they have a baby, or when they're going through some, like, oh, I got to get to the hospital quick, emergency type of situation. They may not be able to think what's going on, but a support person, somebody that's with them, that's offering that help, can say, okay, let's get your bag, let's get this, let's get that, let's get you in the car, let's get you to where you need to be. And so it's always there's a practical side of the support system as well. It's not just offering support verbally, not being a counselor, all those type of things. It's just like, hey, how do we get you to your destination? How do we get you to where you need to be? And how do we help you in your journey to, in this particular step?
It seems to me like a big challenge is how to deal with the silence, and so you're there, and so you say, okay, I don't want to just be this counselor that's trying to provide all these answers when it's not necessarily what's wanted. But then that uncomfortable silence, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's odd because part of my training as a mental health therapist is kind of like we're trained to sit in the silence, right? There's no such thing as awkward silence in our field. And so one of the things that I think we have a problem with, you're right on, is that humans, oftentimes that awkward silence, it gets the best of you, and you just got to say something, you just got to do something, and it's very difficult just to sit there. And I think it's a training process. You have to resist all temptations to speak. You have to resist all temptations just to feel like you have to offer something. And I think it's a crucial thing that we just don't talk about enough, or don't do enough of just sitting there. Oftentimes in communication, a lot of times people listen to speak. They want to jump in, they want to interject, they want to say what they have to say. And we're not taught how to listen, to provide that support and kind of be in that space. And so I think it's a crucial thing that we learn and develop that skill of just listening. And I know it's hard sometimes, especially when people are going through and you think you may have the answers, or you may have been there, done that yourself. But I think oftentimes it's a very crucial element to a conversation that we just got to learn and be good at in those times. Yeah. All right. And so with the informational, like I said, we talked about emotional, we talked about informational, and we kind of talked on the practical support area as well. It's just, again, providing assistance with tasks, providing assistance with errands, and even childcare is something that people don't think about a lot, especially when people don't have children. When somebody's going through something or they need some type of support, again, it doesn't have to be this big emotional thing. They're really depressed or they're anxious or they're worked up. But sometimes having support is just making sure that someone that that's in need of a break, Like, hey, let me come watch the kids for you for an hour or two. Hey, bring them over to my house. We eat some popcorn and watch a movie. Hey, I know you got an appointment that's very important to you. Hey, you might have a Zoom meeting. Let me help you with the kids. And then also being able to speak up for yourself and advocate for yourself if you do need that, and you have people around you that's able to kind of help you in that situation, saying, hey, listen, if at all possible, I got this thing, it's very important, this place I got to be, this thing I have to do. Is it possible for you to just sit with the baby, sit with my kids, come over for a little bit and provide some help with me there, so that I can get to my next appointment or do the thing that I need to do. Often you'll find out with counseling, especially in our community, a lot of barrier to access is just simply having childcare. Imagine you're stressed out. Imagine you're depressed. Imagine you're anxious about something, or you're nervous about making a decision, and you want to seek some professional guidance. A lot of spaces aren't set up to have your kids come and be there. And especially it could get awkward depending on the conversation to have your kid in the room with you when you're trying to get some counseling or trying to get some therapy. Very few spaces are set up unless they're a child-centered therapy place or counseling center for you to have a child present. And so it's very, very, very important that we, as a part of our social support and as part of our support system, we build in these times of having a space for childcare, if that makes sense. And for those of us that have the means, offering financial aid or some type of material assistance in times of need also is a very crucial thing that we don't think about sometimes in our support system. It's like, hey, not that we're looking for, a sugar daddy, sugar mama, or somebody to kind of just be a open donor, but us as individuals that have the means, it's oftentimes, we don't go about our daily task thinking about, okay, who do I know that may be in need of support, that financially I might be able to support them, even if it's, like, hey, I got a bus pass for you, man. I know you're a young guy at the church. You got to get here. You got to get there. You're trying to work. You're trying to go to school. You're a senior in high school. Man, here's a bus pass for you. Here's something, I can slide to you to kind of help you get to where you need to go. Here's a gift card to Chick-fil-A or someplace that you can get you a meal where you're in between school and class and work and all those type of things. And support system, the point I'm trying to make here is not always about someone coming to you and asking for help. It's also looking for opportunities to help others, and keeping people in rotation that, like, hey, every now and again, I'm just checking in. How can I provide some support? Hey, what's going on? Do you need something? And then again, even more practical things as far as providing transportation or helping somebody make arrangements when they can't necessarily make arrangements for themselves. Any questions there about social support when it comes from practical support, emotional support, or informational support?
That's good stuff. And just want to remind anybody that's watching on social media, I see some new names coming on. And so if you want to actually join the conversation on the Zoom platform, just click the link in the comments, pin to the top of the comments, or type it in the chat, and we'll make sure that your questions are addressed or your input is brought out.
Yes, sir. Yep, and the second point there is it's pretty straightforward. Just social support can promote mental and physical health and can help individuals cope with stress. So the idea with social support is just having a team and having a network that can help you. Again, it's not always about life being this big stress ball and you being worked up and you being nervous and scared or anxious or whatever. Oftentimes people don't understand when you're seeking counseling, sometimes when you're doing therapy, even coming for pastoral care, it's not about when your back is against the road. Sometimes you need to tune in. Sometimes you need to check up. Sometimes you need to just come through and be like, hey, you know what? Can I have a conversation with you? Just because it's good to just get things off your chest or have good conversations. And so social support and having that support system is about also being able to have good, meaningful conversations with people, even before you get stressed out, even before you get in bad physical or mental health. It's always just having somebody in the team around and people around. It doesn't have to be a bunch of people. It'll be one or two people that you rely on just to have that social connection. And then barriers to seeking social support. Oftentimes, you'll find it's a surprise that people avoid seeking social support because they feel like they're burdening others. Like they don't want to be a burden on somebody. Like, man, I'm going through this stuff. I got a lot of things going on. I would really love to talk to somebody, but I don't want to be a burden. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of times that feeling of being a burden, keeps us from actually benefiting from having that connection with people and that connection with others and doing what we need to do. And sometimes people's cultural beliefs, sometimes people, especially in our community, like, hey man, what I got going on, what goes on in this house stays in this house. And I don't need to talk to anybody else about what's going on inside this house, or I don't need to talk to anybody about what's going on in my relationship, or what's happening with work or the stress that I'm feeling or whatever. And it becomes problematic because we're not meant to hold all that stuff in. Eventually, we pop, we burst. A pipe can only hold so much. And so sometimes we have to press past that thought that whatever stays here or whatever happens here stays here, and speak to people outside of our home, sometimes to kind of get the help we need. And then lastly, just thinking, I got it all together. And sometimes the fear of being seen as less than, or being seen as somebody that doesn't have it all together, or being seen as somebody that needs help, keeps us away from developing a successful support system or having people around us, because we want to seem self-sufficient and like we got it all together. And that's just problematic, and we got to do better for ourselves.
Yeah, and that seems like a tough one for me right there. Is just that what you said about, hey, what was this is our business in our house, and we don't necessarily, so maybe a trusted counselor, but just that seems kind of to me a challenge, just to share personal matters with with any listening ear. And I know that's a cultural issue. Well, it might not be cultural. Other people might deal with it, but I know, how I was raised, and I know my family, and you don't just necessarily put family business out there like that to anybody. So I can kind of get the counselor piece, but just to any listening ear, to me, sometimes that can be a little dangerous too.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, what you're saying is absolutely right. And so I definitely don't want to come across as just be out there like, hey, you meet some stranger, or somebody that is a busybody and would like to run and tell that. But I think it's what you're saying is twofold. It's like, yes, we do have uh, a culture that celebrates, keeping it in house, which is good. Sometimes you got to keep things tight, and you want to make sure that all the neighbors and then the whole neighborhood don't know what you got going on. But I think it is what you said exactly, having a trusted source. And the one thing that's good about seeing counselor, therapist, even pastoral care, somebody outside your home that's on a professional, is that their job is to keep that secret. Their job is to make sure that what you tell them remains confidential, outside of you saying that you're going to harm yourself or harm someone else, and that you have the means to do it and you actually have a plan to do it. But 99.999.9% of conversations that I had with trained professionals are kept in-house, and they don't go outside of that. Even when I see children, depending on their age, I keep it very light with parents when they ask me what we talked about or what's going on in session. I'll say, hey, well, we talked about this, we talked about that, but I generally try to keep the privacy of even children and some youth, just so that we have a sense of like rapport. Like, if they're telling me all these things and I go run back and tell their parents, there's no rapport that's built, and and then we lose trust and we don't have real conversation. But what you're saying is 100% true. You always want to make sure that, and it's hopefully you're not trial and error, like you thought somebody had your best interest and you told them all your business and now they're telling everybody, but just making sure that the person that you do have a conversation with is someone you can trust. And I know it's difficult sometimes for people that are in positions such as yourself, Pastor Rawls, like, hey, like you have a position amongst people that not that you are trying to do a certain thing, but people may put you on pedestals and keep you in certain places where you can't have problems, where you're not allowed to struggle, where you're not allowed to wrestle with issues or have personal problems. You're supposed to be this, you don't come off as holier than thou, but people will put pastors especially on pedestals and act as if they don't have real life going on, and act as if they don't have problems. And so I can definitely understand in your role, not saying this is the thing that you are dealing with, but people in your role often don't have counselors. They don't have people that they talk to. They don't even have peers. I know a lot of pastors that don't even have their own peers or people in their peer groups that they talk to, for fear of looking a certain way, or them looking down on them, or them going back and gossiping later on about the person. So that you didn't specifically say that, but I'm just saying in general, there's a time sometimes when people that have positions, especially community leaders, church leaders, even, CEOs, business people, they have to be, even me as a dad, like it's very difficult sometimes for me to tell my children I've had a bad day, or I'm not feeling well, or I'm scared about something, or I'm nervous or worried about something, because I need them to think I'm Superman. And I don't want them ever to think that there's any kryptonite that can keep me from being Superman. But sometimes I have to be real with them, and I have to be honest with them and let them know I had a bad day. This was tough. This was hard. This was difficult. But again, getting back to your point is 100% right that you need to make sure you have somebody that's trusted. We do have to sometimes break through that cultural belief of keeping things in house, and have real conversations with people. But again, 100%, it needs to be a trusted source, sometimes a professional, so that it may the conversation will remain in house. But it's a difficult thing. Hopefully, I made sense. I kind of rambled through that, but
Yeah, no, I get it, and the reality is, I don't think I do it um for reasons of not trying to. I think the reason that I do it is just I have to be real careful, and so there aren't people, colleagues, or they're just my wife, and so I don't have colleagues and stuff like that that I go and I share with, because this, I work so hard at protecting my name and making sure that my name is a certain way, and so I guess maybe it's more. I guess I do it for protective reasons, just to ensure that I'm just real careful about who I allow in the inner circle, um, and that could be right or wrong, but that's pretty much how I've been for as long as I can remember.
yeah, and I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think there's always, what they say, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And that, that's the thing that these type of things are just the things that we're taught. Like, hey, we have to keep an eye on things. We got to keep an eye on people. We got to make sure that we see what's going on. Again, that's not what you're saying in your situation, but I do think there is a level of, yes, like you want to keep your circle tight, right? You want to make sure that the people that you entrust with your innermost secrets and your feelings and your emotions are people that that's going to be, those feelings and emotions are going to be safe with. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I can validate that 100%. I think that's perfectly normal. It's just the times where, if any of us, if we know that we can benefit from having a good conversation with somebody, and we decline to do that for fear of being vulnerable, or being seen as weak, or being seen as just vulnerable. I'll just leave it at vulnerable or weak. We can miss out on opportunities for healing, to feel better, to be better, to allow the spirit to move, all these different things. And sometimes, even if you look at it like from a Christian lens, like, confession of sin, the Bible's pretty clear, like, confess your faults one to another, but you want to make sure, you just don't, you're not running and telling that, right? It's a thing. The purpose of it is to get that monkey off your back, to get that burden off the shoulders, so that you don't have to keep living in that darkness, living in that sin, and keeping those secrets, or whatever the case may be, and then having accountability for that thing, right? Somebody that knows, like, hey, okay, John struggles with this. Let me make sure, if I see him going in that direction, like, hey, John, what you doing, bro? I know we had that conversation. Like, what's going on? And so I think there's so many layers to it, but I think the bottom line is, it's just a heart examination. If the reason why we're closed off to people is because we don't want to be emotionally connected with people, because it's easier just to float and not have any concerns for others, then that's, that could be a place for growth. Or it could be wise, like, hey, you just may not need to have a whole bunch of people in your mix and in your business, because it's just unhealthy and it's unwise. So I think it's just a matter of, like, where's your heart? What's going on? Are you connected to someone? Or is there someone you can speak to? And sometimes it may just be a spouse, and sometimes it may need to be somebody outside of your spouse, or our spouses. But it's really just a matter of our health and our mental health, and making sure that we don't have things that are on us, that are burdening us, that are causing us distress, and for lack of whatever, we don't get the help we need, or we don't have those conversations. And again, 100% what you're saying. Always be wise about who you talk to. Always be wise about what you share. But I guess we have to be in a place where we're not afraid to make a connection or have a connection with somebody, just so that we can keep our secrets, you know, and not get the help that we need. Any questions from anyone else? Any other comments? Any questions? Any concerns? Okay, we can go to the next slide. So we kind of talked about it already, but just kind of want to reiterate this idea of the benefits of social support. So we haven't talked, deeply in this conversation about what stress looks like, what depression looks like, what anxiety looks like, but just in general, most our bodies usually give us signs that we're under some kind of duress, stress, depression, anxiety. Because of how we live and the busyness of life, sometimes we have to ignore these things. And if we ignore them too long, heart attacks, strokes, hair fall out, teeth fall out, sick all the time. There's all kind of physical symptoms that can happen when we're having poor mental health. And again, the point of social support is having a time and a place to be with people, to speak with people, to have fun with people, even if it's not about having real deep conversations. One of the things when me and my wife first got married, she used to feel some type of way because we had this marriage group that we were part of, and all the guys would get together and have the greatest time ever, and all the women would get together and just be like, "Oh, my life is so terrible. Oh, my marriage is so terrible. Oh, help me." And then she was like, "Oh, you coming back all happy and all da 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 da." I'm like, well, hey man, we and my boys get together. We don't get together for the point of complaining and bickering. We want to have a good time and enjoy ourselves so we can, just be uplifted and have a good time. And I'm not saying this is all men, all women, but I'm just saying in this particular instance, when me and my wife first got married, my goal in hanging out with the homies was to feel good, was to be in good space, was to feel better, to reduce the stress, to shake off some of the shackles of depression, to be less anxious. And so through the conversation that seemed like my wife was having with her friends, and it may have been helpful, but it seemed as if their conversation more was geared towards, and the things that they did was more geared towards talking through the stress, talking through the depression, talking through the anxiety, whatever mental health things, or just things that may have been going on. And she couldn't understand why we weren't doing it the same way as them. And she was like, "Oh, well, y'all just don't talk deep about stuff, or y'all don't want to get to know each other like that. Y'all don't." Be like, no, our goal in our social support is to feel better. And we might go shoot some hoops. We might go play pool. We might play some video games. We might watch a movie. We might watch football, whatever it is that we're doing. But our goal is to have that support for one another, that if something comes up and we want to have serious conversations and go deep about things, we do. But it's just the nature of things. Sometimes your support group ain't about having those deep conversations. It's not about decompressing in terms of like saying a bunch of things. It just may be to have fun, and to kind of just spend time with people you enjoy spending time with, to feel better. Because it's hard out here. There's a lot of stuff going on, and sometimes you just don't want to talk about difficult stuff. You don't want to be in that space 24/7, and you just want to have a good time and feel good and hang out with your friends and your people.
So would you say it's really about, and I could be wrong, I'm just trying to put together what you're saying. You were saying the socialization is really about getting off the island, not necessarily what you do when you get off the island, but kind of just getting off that island by yourself and being with others. But it's not so much about what the particular activity is. That's more individual and what works for you. But it's really kind of getting off of that island by yourself.
100%. Yep. It's definitely not about the regimen of we must do this, we must do that, we have to talk about this. No, it's just the idea of like what brings relief to you, what helps you enjoy being with those people that you're being with during that time, and getting off that island so that you can leave that over there, let that marinate or whatever, dissipate or disappear, or maybe to resolve itself or whatever. But just being able to step away from that space, whatever's on that island, and getting into good spaces. Almost like when people come to the altar, we always say, hey, come to the altar, leave it at the altar. But then we take it back with us. And it's like, what was the point of coming to the altar? What was the point of getting prayed for? What was the point of saying, Lord, take this thing, Jesus be the wheel? And then we got our hands right back on the wheel, trying to be in control of that thing. It's like, no, when you leave the island, be with your people, have a good time, de-stress, enjoy yourself. It's not like YOLO, like just be out here with no, just we just doing whatever. No, it's more, it's just having this is a good time to to experience the freedom of the distraction that comes with getting off that island.
And so, is there anything in that? I guess that's where the other stuff comes in. But the reality of our lives is, but we got to return. And so,
Yes.
how am I? Is what I do when I get off? Is that just kind of just a stress reliever, or does that also kind of help me deal with the realities that I just can't run from it? I have to return to it and know how to learn how to cope with it. That comes from some other type of therapy.
It can. You asking great questions. I think it's a both and in this situation. So the example I was giving with my wife is like, hey man, yeah, we get together, we have fun with our boys, and we got to go back home. Like, nah, bro, you got to go home and deal with that thing. And so if it's something that needs to be dealt with, again, it's up to us to make sure if other people don't know what's going on, hey, let me bend your ear for a second and have this conversation because I got to go back home to this thing and I got to figure out what's going on. And then you have those conversations, right? You get the advice and you have time with your friends or one person or whatever, or if it's a counselor, somebody trained, professional pastor, you have those deep conversations and you go back. Uh, but the idea also, like you're saying, is like, hey, sometimes we just need to refuel. Sometimes we just need to refresh. Sometimes we need to just like, man, it's so deep and it's so heavy over there. I just need to come and have a good time. I just need to come laugh. I just need to come enjoy myself. I need to be around people that don't cause me stress so that when I get back to that space, I'm able to handle it better. I'm able to be in a better mood. It's kind of like for me. So one of the things that I enjoy is being outside, going on walks, working in my yard, farming, being in nature, like that, like hearing birds chirp, like those things bring me so much peace. And sometimes when my house is busy, when the kids are doing whatever, when me and my wife maybe are just not seeing eye to eye to things, I say, hey guys, I'll be right back. I go outside, take me a good 15-minute walk. Now this isn't necessarily about social support, but I do what I need to do to take space in that moment. And the good thing about social support and having other people around you is that you can either choose to speak all these things and have these deep conversations, or you can just get that recharging, that refreshing that you need from good company so that you can go back and handle those things. And yes, like you're saying, 100%, it's not to avoid. The point of you leaving the island is not to like, hey man, I hope they figure it out. It's more so like just to like, Jesus went off to the mountain, man. He's like, hey, I got to go up here, get some space. We're going to take this boat, head over here. We just going to get some space real quick and kind of regroup and pray and do what we need to do. And it's kind of the same thing. Like, hey, you just can't always be under that stress and under that pressure and think that you're going to work you're going to be your most optimal self, that you're going to be your best self. You got to leave. You got to get that space. You got to have those deep conversations. Yes, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but it needs to happen at some point in time with somebody. And then sometimes you just refresh and you just feel better so that you can get back in the fight, get a good night's sleep, get some rest, and be able to tackle that thing next time it gets brought up or you have to deal with it.
Maybe that's why God commanded that we um understand the concept of a Sabbath. A time, a time to step away and be restored and refreshed.
Yep, 100%. That is probably the greatest example. You have the creator of heaven and earth of all things. Like, you know what? Let's take a break. You know what I'm saying? And if God is like, take a break, I think we will be unwise for ourselves to not have that Sabbath built in. And the great thing about the community that we should have, and again, coming with the social support, is that we can share space with others so that we can be refreshed or that we can refresh others. So even in that, it's like we leave an island or we do what we need to do to get that space, but we don't have to do it alone. And I think that's the beauty of community and that's the beauty of social support, is that, man, when you have others, it's just again, outside of the Job situation, if you got the right people around you and they're saying the right things and you're helping through those tough times in an appropriate way, whether they're just sitting there, whether they are saying things, or whether y'all just playing basketball and having a good time with each other, the beauty of social support is that community helps us in those times of need.
And I guess the reality is, and home could just as well be that place, because sometimes what you have to do in professional or other things like that can be so weighty to where your refuge is home, with your loved ones, until it's time to go back and hit that clock again or whatever it is that you do to make a living. And so, like you say, It's the idea, not necessarily the place. You know, I the thing that I may need to get from is the thing that I have to clock in and do. And so yeah, yeah.
Yep, 100%. And that's one thing I talk about a lot when I'm counseling couples. Is like, and families. It's the world. It's you against the world. Sometimes it's y'all against the world, right? And when a person comes home, when they cross that threshold, they want to be in peace. Right. They want to feel it even driving up to the house. You know what I'm saying? They want to get home and be able to let their hair down, kick off their shoes, relax and rest. And when we're in situations where we're making it difficult for our partners, for our children, for our family members, whatever, to be in good space when they come home, we got to do better. Because like you're saying, man, it's the world is a treacherous place. And if home ain't a place of rest and respite, we gonna be tore up. We're gonna be all jacked up. So I always try to hit on that point of making home a place where you can really really de-escalate, really de-stress.
John, this is Irma. I had
how you doing?
I'm well. How are you? I had
Good.
I'm looking at the slides for social support to help reduce stress, depression, anxiety. I had a knee replacement a few months ago, and I was just nuts, really. Self-esteem was low because when you're used to doing everything for yourself, and then you have no choice but to have somebody else do it for you, that's really, really low self-esteem. And I was very depressed. My physical therapist gave me the support that I needed, because there were times when I just didn't want to do anything. And I would just fight tears, and he would make me do it. And he'd say, okay, you want to cry? Tears are optional. Go ahead and cry. And then I would call him things, and he said, oh, that's okay. I've been called a lot of things. If you don't hate me, then this therapy is not successful. But he was there for me. Well, he is there for me. And like you said earlier, sometimes he would sit for like 30 minutes and say nothing. He just let me vent. And then after I'd been and had my little pity party, and he'd say, okay, now we're going to add 20 reps to what you needed to do 10. And so we'd start all over again until he is always there for me physically, because he told me once that the doctors handled the physical aspect, but they didn't see the mental stress that it had on the patient. And the first time that I was able to shower and dress myself, I cried for like 30 minutes. It was a relief. But I didn't share this with anybody but Scott. And he said, you will, even Pastor Rawls called one day and he said, Sister Irma, could I come by and see, could your pastor come by? I said, no, because I was in that space where I didn't want to talk to anybody. But I got to the point, and Scott said, listen, you're gonna have to go out of this house. You're going to have to do this. You're gonna have to talk to some people. You don't have to tell them everything you're going through, but you're gonna have to talk to some people, because I'm gonna go home. So you're going to need that support. But the stronger I got physically, the stronger I became mentally. And I do realize that you need that support. You need the people around you, but you also need the people you can trust. You need to be able to say, hey, this is going on with me. I need you to help me with this. And so I'm really enjoying this session because I lived this. And you're right, the support is important, because you cannot bounce back unless you're strong. And this was very difficult for me because I'm a strong woman, but I couldn't handle it because my independence was threatened. That's what it was. And so you're right. You need the support. You need to be able to trust the people that you're asking for support. But it's good. I'm 3/4 of the way back, but you're right. I'm loving this session. Thank you.
No problem, no problem. Listen, what you said is amazing. I mean, it's very often that we don't come to grips. We don't see the need for that social support until we get into a place where we physically can't. Like
Right.
I had a same situation. I ruptured, or a similar situation. I ruptured my Achilles playing basketball. And at the time I was in grad school, and I had a job, and I went from full-time to part-time, and I didn't realize I'm young, and I didn't realize that was gonna mess up my insurance. So I'm taking my clothes off, getting ready to get on the table. The nurse comes in and says, "Hey man, we just ran your insurance, and it looks like you don't have insurance anymore." I was like, what happened? But it's because I went down to part-time. Right. So what happened is they treated me like I was homeless, sent me to the county hospital, and they did like this indigent surgery on me. And they did an old school method to where most people nowadays, you get Achilles surgery, you just in a walking boot, you leave the hospital walking, skipping, whistling Dixie, having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to be in a cast for, I think, from April to October, October, and they were just setting my foot in different positions because of the way they had interns working, cutting me open because I got the homeless treatment or whatever. And so that time on my back, man, I was just in the weirdest space, like self-doubt swirling, my life trying to figure out what I had going on. Well, it was just I was just in my head about a lot of stuff because physically I wasn't able to do the things I was normally able to do. And just sitting there, being on my back, sitting in the bed, sitting at home, I was just like, this is crazy. But I didn't have the wherewithal, I didn't have the information that I have now to know to pick up the phone and call somebody. Mm-hmm. People would come by every now and then. They do like, Pastor Ross, hey, let me pop up. But I was like, yeah, nah, I'm all right. I'm gonna just be here and I'll see you next time type of thing. And so that's when we have to understand, and why we have to have these conversations more often, so that we know ahead of time when these things happen, whether they're really physically debilitating things or just things that just kind of got us down. We got to be willing to reach out, or already have support in such a way where people know what's going on with us. Like, hey, John, what's going on? I noticed I haven't seen you. You're not as talkative as you usually are. You really been moping. Like, what's going on? Like, we gotta establish those things ahead of time, so that when we are in those places where we can't do for self, that we have people that can come alongside us.
Absolutely. And you're right. Insurance is very important because I was in that mindset. Thank God I have great insurance. I didn't want to go into the lab for physical therapy, but I didn't have to. So that helped too. Until I wanted to go, it always helps that you can call the shots about your health care.
And I think your story embodies this idea of the positive outcomes, and even the lasting things for social support. Is like when you have a coach, when you have your physical therapist that's pushing you, that's telling you can do, that's letting you cry, that's letting you talk, that's letting you do whatever you need to do. It innately builds that self-esteem, and it builds self-efficacy, like the belief in yourself, to the ability to do, okay, I can do these reps, I can do what I need to do, I can get stronger, I can handle my business. As opposed to when you don't have that, oftentimes you just self-doubt, you don't believe, you crumble, you get worse, you don't get better, you don't do what you need to do because you don't have that community, you don't have that tribe, you don't have those people around you, or that person that can push you. And that especially in the time of bounce back, when you really need to come back stronger.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that, Ms. Sherman. I appreciate that.
Oh, no, thank you, John. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Okay, no problem. And I'm gonna wrap up for this slide. Just again reminding us in this conversation, we have like social support is very important for getting positive feedback, getting the encouragement, getting the validation that we need, and then having those positive interactions that can offset feelings of self-doubt, feelings of worthlessness, feelings of negativity that we can kind of have circling around us. And And we need those people that can kind of get us out of that funk, that can get us out of that space. And it's very important. And I'll leave it at that. Let me go to the next slide. And any before we get to this, any questions? Anybody else had any statements or anything they want to share?
No, good stuff.
Okay, all right. So reminders, when we're talking about social support, and like one of the biggest things that I think, again, as I was talking about COVID and kind of the pandemic and stuff that was happening, I know for myself, I kind of shrunk into a side of myself or a part of myself that I didn't really necessarily like, because hey, when you're kind of forced to be at home, and even when we first got to Gainesville, the parks were shut down. We got here in 2020. I'm like, man, the kids, we can't even take the kids outside. They're making sure people social distance. They don't even they shut down the parks. Like, they serious about this thing, right? And so I kind of built this habit of instead of calling people more and Zooming people more and FaceTiming people more, I did less of that. And I did the least of that. And I stopped having those conversations, and I stopped checking in, and I stopped making sure that I had intentional conversation with friends, close associates, or people, family, or whatever the case may be. And the most important thing about social support is understanding it's a two-way street. Oftentimes when we're going through stuff, or when we need people, we expect people to reach out to us. And then we get an attitude when ain't nobody calling, when ain't nobody coming by. And then when they do come by, we got an attitude, and then they stop coming by. So it's kind of like, yo, why would somebody come by if we got an attitude when we finally do show up, right? So it's kind of one of those things where we have to understand in social support, it is a two-way street, and we got to nurture those existing relationships. Like it's one to help us with our mental health. It can help us recover from physical things that are going on. But we have to make time for meaningful interactions with family and friends. And we have to engage in shared activities and hobbies that strengthen those bonds. And again, in a time like COVID, it was difficult to maybe physically do that outside of the people in your home. But we have technology, those of us that don't live maybe in rural areas and have issues with internet and cell phone service or whatever. But we have to be intentional about nurturing those relationships. And I can't stress it enough. It is a two-way street. I know too many people who live a hermit lifestyle and are confused as to why nobody calls, nobody hangs out, nobody wants to come by, nobody wants to be with them, because they kind of set things up, right? And it's too many people that I worry about in my family that I'm like, man, I need to know, like somebody very close to me in my family, a male in my life, is like, hey, no news is good news. I'm like, that don't make no sense. Like, I need to know what's going on with you. And it mean that you just slipped and fell. Like, you slipped and fell in the bathtub and you ain't got life alert. And I don't know what's going on, right? And so that mantra of no news is good news don't work when it comes to social support and engaging with people and having successful relationships. Like, we need to check in, and we need to have people, we need to check in with others as much as we want people to check in with us. And we have to be inviting, and we have to want that. And again, it's not about having all the friends. It's not about having everybody come over and be around everybody, but having one or two key people, being open with your spouse, if it's just you and your spouse, whatever that looks like. And again, one thing too is sometimes adults, especially parents, overshare. This is a side note. We burden our children, and sometimes we burden loved ones when we overshare, right? We have to be mindful of what people can take and what people are built for. And some people can't take all the burdens. Some people can't take all the problems and all the issues. And so some people, we have to be mindful of the type of relationships we have with certain people, and know that, hey, this person, John, is a person that I talk to and I hang out with when I want to have a good time, but he's real sensitive and he cries a lot, and he might disappear if I tell him too much stuff. It get too heavy for him and I can't depend on him. So I just keep it light with him. But you got to have people, and you got to have persons that you can be deep with. And sometimes some people are just shallow with. Some people are just associates. You hang out, you go to Dave and Buster's and whatever, shoot some hoops. But you got to nurture those relationships. Any questions on that, comments, concerns? Okay. The other thing, expanding your social circle. And so this is one of those things where it's kind of like Pastor Ross, you were saying before, it's like, what does it look like to have a healthy social circle? Is it just me and my wife, my kids, maybe my next door neighbor, maybe my auntie, maybe whoever? And again, social support ain't about deep, dark secrets. It doesn't have to be about, I got these people that I go to and they know all my business. You can join clubs, you can join organizations, you can join groups, you can even volunteer. that you can, so you can connect with like-minded people or even different people, so that you can have that social engagement. Because again, it's not always about woe is me, woe is me, woe is me, life is bad. It's about, man, I like being outside, and my people don't do enough of that. So I'm gonna start a group where we go camping, where we go hiking, where we go walking, and we go out in the woods and we do scary stuff that we don't normally do, because it's good for us to do, to challenge ourselves, to learn about nature, to be outside, to have the good feeling, to get some vitamin D, to get fresh air. Like, I can join clubs and start clubs and be a part of that stuff to have that good social support. And again, it doesn't have to be the down and out club. It can be, we just have a good time when we get together. And you can also participate in community events, and activities to broaden social connections. We just had the trunk or treat at the church. We do different things. We even passing out food at the food giveaways. Like, you can find meaning in doing good things for other people. And you can also have conversations with the people. I mean, I get, you got to do your job. I haven't done a food giveaway yet. I'm sure there's an assembly line. I guess you can't be too talkative. You got to get business handled. But I'm sure in those times, either before or after, you can have conversations. You can, hang out with people, and you get that social connection while still handling business. But it's important to have that expanded social circle so that it's not always just you by yourself on that island. And it's not always about tough stuff. Just have a good time, do something good for others, volunteer, join clubs, whatever that looks like. And encouragement is the key. I think one of the things about social support is, like, you definitely don't want to have the pity party club be the only club that you're a part of, because you want to have that positive reinforcement, and you want to have a support network that can motivate you, that can give you confidence, that can and spur you on to do good things. And you don't. Oftentimes, I see a lot of clients who are just miserable people, and misery loves company, and that's what they keep around them, and they wonder why they don't feel better, why they don't get better, why they don't see life as half full instead of half empty. But when you have people around you that's more of a discouragement than an encouragement, it's going to set you up for failure all the time. And this is kind of something that Pastor Ross was talking about before: professional help. Professional help comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. Professional help can be a support group. Like, for instance, some people that struggle with alcohol and drugs, there's Alcoholics Anonymous, and there's all kind of anonymous. There's the anonymous groups exist for all kind of things. There's group therapy, where it's like an organized time for where maybe it's young men 18 to 26 to get together with a therapist, a counselor, a pastor, somebody that's leading the group, and they just talk in free flow about life and what's going on, and their challenges and their experiences, and what's going on. It could be individual counseling, it could be family counseling, it could be just doing the work professionally. But an underrated person that I'm not trying to give Pastor Rawls extra work and have everybody, some people come beat down his door, but people don't see that their pastor, that their spiritual advisor is somebody that they can go to and not just ask questions about, well, was it really a snake in the garden? Was it an apple or was it a pear? Like, you don't have to have those. Like, your pastor could be somebody that you can go to have this type of conversation. Now, they can't always be to everything all the time, but when their time is available, someone like a pastor, even a social worker, or somebody else that kind of works in that frame of helping people for a living or just for fun, can be somebody that you can come to and get that social support. Again, you don't want to burden people, but you want to have an expansive group where there's a paid professional, somebody that's there that works in a capacity to be a social worker or to be a pastor or a community leader, something that you can be in their ear. Because again, the goal is to develop whatever social skills that you need to identify, to support and talk about support, and then address the underlying issues that may be happening. Again, whether that's personal, or just, you just want to talk about the game that happened last night and LeBron going for 50 points or something. Got a little bit of time. Any more questions? Any questions with any of those?
That's good.
Okay. All right. Well, the next slide is the last slide. Just again, reiterating the point, social support is a crucial factor in maintaining good mental health and overall well-being. And by cultivating strong social connections and actively seeking supports when you need it, even sometimes when you don't, like I said, if you just want to be around people because you just want to have a good time, it don't have to be deep. It don't have to be, let me tell you about how bad my day was. It's just, hey, I just want to laugh and have a good time. And we can enhance our mental health, improve the quality of life, and we can thrive in our communities when we have good social support.
So it sounds like we really weren't created to spend too much time in seclusion.
No, not at all. Not at all. Very little time. Oh, I won't say very little time. We're definitely meant to. Man was not meant to. Well, no, I was gonna say live alone, but I guess the scripture is bread alone. But we weren't meant to live alone for sure. We were meant to live with other people and have a good time and be able to share our lives with others.
Good. All right. Well, I think it's good. Somebody said that's why men's ministries and women's ministries in the church is so important. And so yeah, I think you find groups that you can connect with and and just fulfill that social need that all of us have within inside of us, and you determine what those groups are. But yeah, they're definitely beneficial. Helps us kind of escape sometimes and be restored and revived.
100%.
Pastor Ross,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
joined the fantasy football league. So it's
How you doing? How your
I'm
season going?
7-2.
Oh,
Okay.
super now.
I need your cheat sheet next season. Oh man.
That's good.
Yeah, that's very good. And that's the beauty of it, man. Social support, fantasy football. What greater time to have social support to be with people than fantasy football? It's a good time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but
wonderful.
it can get to be a job because you have to
Yeah.
get up like early and look at the wire and see who's
Right.
hurt, but it does occupy your time. So
Yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah. I guess it's therapy. It's
It is
yeah.
because if your best players having a bye week, you're scrambling off the wire trying to get somebody to put in place. So it keeps your mind occupied. So
So you can't
and
even
it's fun.
you can't even enjoy the game soon as they get hurt. You trying to get a heads up on the next week in the game
Yeah,
instead
but
of
and then you have to wonder, should I put this hurt player? Should I
yeah,
cut him? But then you think, no, he won't be hurt all the time. So you
yeah,
better, yes, it is fun. It is
yeah,
fun.
yeah. I don't think we were meant to be. We weren't created to live in seclusion. That's why John he didn't spend his whole life on the Isle of Patmos. He spent some time there for God to show him some things. But it wasn't meant for his whole life to be secluded on the Isle of Patmos. And I just think in life we do have to take advantage of community. God created us to operate in community. So good stuff. Good stuff. Anybody else?
Jesus
Anybody
had
else? Say it again.
No, I was just saying, and Jesus had disciples. You know what I'm saying? He had his folks with him. You know, he wasn't by himself.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when he realized he had one in the midst that he couldn't trust, he didn't have a nervous breakdown. He said,
Right.
Go on, do what you're gonna do. Go on, do what
Yeah,
you're gonna do, and we're gonna do what we're gonna do.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else got anything you want to add or any other questions you want to ask before we prepare to say goodbye? I want to thank John for sliding into our mental health ministry and providing some good conversation for us. Roxalina is dealing with some health challenges, and Katrina's dealing with some health challenges, and so we thank God for them and everything that they have always done. And we're into year 3. We're finishing up year 3 now, and then we want to thank John for coming and being there for us. And I guess God's an on-time God. Before they even knew that they were going to be dealing with some additional health challenges, they were calling on John to step in and join the team. So God is God. And so I want to thank everybody for joining in. And remember the pastor's table is coming up on December the 12th, to where December the 9th, where we share the vision of the church over dinner and have conversation and dialogue as we approach this new year. So go to gbgville.com and click that flyer for the pastor's table and sign up. Looking forward to a wonderful new year, and got some things that we'll be announcing where John is concerned. He's putting both feet in the water and ready to do ministry. Anybody that wants to help us out, be here at 7:30 on Saturday for our annual turkey basket giveaway. And we could use your hand as it relates to passing out food, packing food, or parking cars, or directing traffic. We could use your help. Please be here Saturday at 7:30. But God bless you, and we look forward to seeing you at the next GB event. Have a great one.
Good night. Thank you, John.
Great information.
No problem. Thank y'all for being here.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.